Thank you, trustees. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask those who are able to stand for the acknowledgement of tradition. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Thank you. Trustees, this is a special meeting and it has one item on the agenda. Do we have any declaration of possible conflict of interest? Seeing no conflict of interest, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a minister's announcement regarding the appointment of financial investigator. That is the main item for discussion today. I'd like to ask the director if you would like to say any preliminary remarks before we begin.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I'll keep my remarks brief. On April 23rd, the minister announced the appointment of a financial investigator to review the board's current financial position. I apologize. Thank you. I'll restart and through you, Chair. On April 23rd, the minister announced the appointment of a financial investigator to review the board's current financial position and recommend whether control and charge of the board should be vested in the ministry. And in other words, whether the board should be placed under supervision. Supervision means that the ministry would take control of the board's governance functions. I want to emphasize that at this time, TDSB has not been placed under supervision. There are no current changes to the board's governance structure, and staff continue to work to present options to the board to reach a balanced budget for the 2025-26 school year. When an investigator is appointed, and to our knowledge, one has not been appointed or announced yet, then staff will work with the investigator to meet the Minister of Education's deadline of May 30th. We are committed to working with the board to achieve a balanced budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. Trustees with comments or questions? Trustee Laskin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask staff a question. So tomorrow is May 1st, and the financial investigator is supposed to come to the board and deliver a report by May 30th. For you, Mr. Chair, to staff, can you confirm how long it took the Auditor General to go through the board's books and finances? For you, Mr. Chair, to staff.
Thank you. Through the chair, the investigation started in February 2023, and we're in or at TDSB for over 18 months, with the report being prepared and released in December 2024.
Thank you very much. Follow-up question. Is it not a requirement now of board staff to send a monthly report to the ministry in terms of financial reporting? For you, Mr. Chair, to staff.
Through the chair, that is correct. We do monthly financial reports to the ministry.
So that being said, Mr. Chair, I just do not understand the appointment of a financial investigator that's supposed to report back in a month, where the ministry's had monthly financial reports from the TDSB, where we have a financial facts document on the website that opens it up to where the underspending is, where the gaps are. I guess I'm just feeling, and the fact that this announcement was made last Friday and still no investigator has been appointed. I'm really wondering, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, what's the reality check on how much the ministry's investigator can actually comprehend within a month if they have had no prior knowledge of the TDSB financials? For you, Mr. Chair, to staff.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to Trustee Laskin. The scope of the investigation has not been announced, and we don't know the details of the investigation, the nature. So staff wouldn't be able to answer that question until we receive more information or direction from the ministry.
Okay, so now it's even clearer. The ministry announced a financial investigator. The financial investigator has not been announced yet. The scope of the financial investigation has not been clarified. And yet the report is supposed to be made by May 30th. And the threat within the letter talks about the first phase of potential supervision. I don't believe this is at all about the finances of the Toronto District School Board or the mismanagement, as the minister has quoted. This is only about underfunding of public education in the city of Toronto and attempting to deflect from the ministry's responsibility thrown at the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Laskin. Trustee McLean.
Thank you, and through the chair, just a procedural inquiry. Now, having never gone through this, I'm not familiar with the process. Does the investigator come by themselves? Do they bring a team? Do they direct our team, our financial services team? The logistics, how does this work, and how does this affect the current efforts of our staff to meet? Because it's been my understanding that they're a little busy, so.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to Trustee McLean. We will await further direction from the ministry, and once the announcement of the investigator is made, and staff have the opportunity to receive whatever outline the ministry provides and have an opportunity to meet with the investigator, then we'll have a better idea of the kinds of resources that it will take. I would suspect, Trustee McLean, through your chair, that any of the scenarios that you've outlined could be true. I would anticipate that the investigator would be supported by others, whether they be from the ministry's finance area or from additional resources allocated to support the work. And we anticipate that this will require support from the board's finance team and perhaps others to inform whatever insights the investigator will subsequently provide to the minister. However, details will need to be provided in relation to your question once we have further information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee McLean. Trustee Rajakulasingam.
Thank you, through the chair. I think it's very timely that we're coming from our budget meeting and having this conversation, but I'm wondering if staff can maybe share details around our deficit recovery plan being submitted, implemented, and then being rejected by the ministry, just so that the public has more information around what steps we took around that, and maybe also under what conditions, if it was shared, what conditions, under what conditions was the deficit recovery plan rejected? I'm wondering if staff can share any details around that.
Thank you, and through the chair. Based on the deficit recovery plan that was received by trustees in August, staff submitted the deficit recovery plan to the ministry on September 30th. We had not heard anything about our deficit recovery plan until April 23rd, when we found out that it had been rejected through the press conference. So I will say that, and made this an indication in the letter when it was sent, that even though it was not approved, everything that in the deficit recovery plan was operational and therefore was being implemented anyways. So I did make an indication in the letter that regardless of received versus approved, it was still being implemented.
Trustee Rajakulasingam.
Thank you, and through the chair. And just to reiterate, there was never any memo or follow-up from the ministry on things to improve on, or any information that this was going to be rejected apart from, I mean, until it came to the release a few weeks ago or a few days ago.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Trustee Rajakulasingam. Can I pass the chair to you, Trustee Patel?
Go ahead, yeah, sure.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Director, what has there been any conversation or have you heard anything about the other two school boards that were also named around the financial? I saw an appointment for Thames Valley for the supervisor, but did we hear from the other two school boards that were named as school boards that will have financial investigation?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. For clarification, Trustee Shen, are you asking if we've received updates from the other boards as to the appointment?
If we had any conversations with the other boards?
Just informal dialogue about the what has been announced. But in terms of planning, there's no planning steps forward.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the understanding is that they also haven't gotten their investigators named.
To our knowledge, neither of the two boards for which a financial investigator has been announced has received the details of the financial investigator.
Thank you. Just asking through you, Mr. Chair, is there a benefit for either the chair or the director to communicate our eagerness to work together and figure out that we would need the necessary amount of time, and the staff, since they are already working on a whole bunch of other things, to be able to dedicate the time to have ample time to let us know the next steps at the earliest convenient. I know that's been a conversation, but if it's something that could be either written by the director or written by the chair, would that be of benefit?
Through you, Chair, staff will act on any direction from the board in regard to any formal communications with the ministry. To date, staff have reached out to the ministry to inquire about timing of the financial investigator, recognizing that, as has been stated, a report back to the minister is due by May 30th, leaving limited time to conduct the work, write the report, present the report, and then to await anything further from there. Staff received a response indicating that the announcement would be expected soon, but we do not have any specific information about specific timing. But I would anticipate, given the circumstance, that it will be soon. And again, staff is happy to follow up or continue to follow up in that regard. And if there are further steps that you want us to take, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Shen.
Chair back.
Chair back.
Anybody else? Trustee Erhard then?
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I did want to ask, because I thought we received a letter in June from the then minister expressing a willingness and approving some proceeds of disposition. Could staff walk me through what the letters and the exchanges? Thanks very much.
So through the chair, in June, and I'm just trying to find the exact date, staff received a letter from staff indicating that, and at that time, I believe we had indicated that we were looking for approval of $27.5 million in proceeds of disposition. And then we had moved to $28 million. And there was a letter that staff received from staff to say that the minister would approve the $28 million if, and then there were a number of conditions that were outlined. And so the response on September 30th not only addressed the multi-year deficit, which is one of those conditions, it also addressed the other conditions that they had asked staff to take into consideration. And again, we have not heard back anything from that response in September. So the June, I believe it was, I will have to look. I mean, I don't want to quote the wrong date, but it was received from staff to say, we will approve the $28 million proceeds of disposition to help balance your budget if, and then a bunch of conditions. And we responded back with no response.
Okay, thanks very much. So it's sounding to me like we have been responsive to concerns and have continued in dialogue, both at board level and at staff level. And so I'm just going to take a breath because I am so frustrated. Just today, Financial Accountability Office has released a report on the economic impacts that tariffs could pose on Ontario's economy. We are in an existential crisis as a country, and I'm just very, very upset that these are the first actions of the minister is to start in motion these steps when we are still in a process where they have the option through a budget to provide adequate funding for Toronto District School Board and all school boards who are facing deficit and chronic underfunding situations. So I just think now is really the time for us to focus on protecting our province and everyone in our province, our businesses, our seniors, our children, for whom we have a responsibility as elected officials, and all of the public institutions that make Ontario an amazing place to live. And in our capacity as stewards of Toronto's schools through the Toronto District School Board, I see that as our obligation to be flagging that this is an institution that our provincial minister should also be seeking to protect at this moment in time at our province's and country's history. It is just simply not the time. We work together on getting cell phones out of schools after the pandemic. We still have more work to do on that, but we worked together. This is a moment of working together. I also want to say that I'm getting letters. I'm going to read part of the letter that I'm receiving, which is going to several ministers. This past week, your government announced investigations of Toronto school boards for not making cuts to community programs. These announcements took place while Community Living Ontario released evidence of a crisis in Ontario schools for students with disabilities, adding to mounting evidence of the dire need for more broad-based supports for all kids. School boards across the province have been experiencing deficits since the pandemic because even though education funding has been increasing, it has not been increasing as fast as inflation. So that means, and even our school children can tell us this, that there is less money per child being spent in real terms each year. I will keep going to just say, it says, and this is what I understand to be true as well, I understand your government could choose at any time to provide more funding to support kids. I do feel that we are doing our part. I was incredibly disheartened for the comments made around trustees. There are people across this province stepping forward after the pandemic to support our public institutions. And I hope we will work together across all orders of government to uphold these institutions in the face of existential threats. I will do my all to uphold them for the sake of our children. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm moving a motion later. Thank you.
You have to move it.
Just speak once, so I'm moving my motion.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And you can come back and speak to the motion afterwards. Thank you very much, Trustee Earhart. Do you want to take your time to talk about the motion now, or do you want to talk after?
I'm happy to talk about the motion right now. I have right here on April 16th, a motion that we unanimously supported at the time, all trustees in attendance, which was right after this new government was formed. It says, can you hear me? Whereas the April 15th speech from the throne noted Ontario's record investments in public education. And whereas despite these investments, there's still an estimated $1,500, some say $750, some say $1,500. It's all underfunding, a shortfall in per student provincial funding when adjusted for inflation. And whereas OBSPA has noted that when adjusted for inflation, this is the lowest level of per pupil funding in more than 10 years. And whereas the 24-25 budget cycle had 31 of the 72 Ontario school boards in deficit, and whereas school boards were never reimbursed for the extraordinary costs that were incurred to ensure schools were as safe as possible during the COVID pandemic, which includes 61 million incurred by the TDSB. And whereas TDSB staff have reported to board that the Toronto District School Board faces a structural deficit, and whereas in reference to the TDSB structural deficit, the Auditor General's 2024 annual report recommended that the TDSB and the Ministry of Education work together in areas where the TDSB faces unique circumstances contributing to the structural deficit. Therefore, be it resolved that the chair write to the recently sworn in Minister of Education with urgency, making note of all of this. And so that is what I'm referring to in this advocacy motion. So whereas we provided direction to seek to work with the recently sworn in Minister of Education, then the Minister of Education followed up and announced that it would be investigating several school boards' use of finances and resources, including the TDSB, including issuing a recommendation on whether to take the board under supervision, doing this prior to the passage of a budget where they could at any time choose to provide the funding that we have been requesting as a board every single opportunity that we have had as a board here. So then, whereas TDSB trustees are committed to serving our communities and fulfilling our legislative duty to support student achievement and well-being, everyone here took an oath, as I did, to fulfill this duty. And I know we are all committed to it as our trustees across this province who stood up in 2022 after the pandemic declarations, emergency orders were lifted to rebuild our schools as places for our children to learn, to play, to be together, to grow, and to thrive. Be it resolved that the chair continue to seek to engage the Minister of Education with urgency regarding the need for budget 2025 and education funding to address the growing inflationary gap, special education funding, which becomes clearer and clearer every day with every report that comes out, and other areas noted in TDSB's 25-26 budget priorities, making reference to areas currently underfunded because we already flagged this to them that are both inside, well, that are outside of the control of the TDSB. I think we also have to seek to engage the Minister of Education to express our desire to work together in areas where the TDSB faces unique circumstances that have been outlined by staff and that we, by way of board, have passed several motions on, like the moratorium on school closures, with the shared goals of supporting student achievement and well-being, that we seek to engage other ministers, the Ontario Public School Boards Association, and other orders of government wherever relevant, as we have done with all of our other motions for budget advocacy for children, with the federal government and with municipal orders of government, and that the chair work with the director to communicate the financial facts that we have been presented with as a board in a way that the public can digest this information about the urgency of the situation. I hope that trustees will join me in supporting this motion, supporting the urgency of the advocacy that is needed here, and also in the willingness to work together for the sake of our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Trustee Earhart. Any trustees who wish to speak? Anybody online? Thank you. That's
Can we get a recorded vote? Thank you.
right. It's seconded by trustee Rajwani. Or trustee McLean. Can you? Okay. We'll have a recorded vote. Yeah, it'll be just.
Through the chair, it's trustee Williams. I don't have access to eScribe at the moment.
Yeah,
I vote in favor.
just a second, trustee Williams. We are just getting the system ready. So I'll let you know once it's ready. But we mark you as a, so yes, thank you. Ready on the screen?
Chris Kamaraj in favor.
Thank you. And trustee Williams was in favor as well. Shan in favor.
Dawson in favor.
A in favor.
McLean in favor.
Wong in favor.
King in favor.
Trustee Hastings in favor as well.
Lee's in favor.
Trustee Patel in favor, is that? Trustee Klein?
In favor.
Rajagul Singh, I'm in favor.
Trustee Nanziara? Trustee Nanziara, are you there? Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. That's carried unanimously. Is there any other questions or discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing none, we will have a motion to adjourn. Yeah, can I have trustee Laskin, trustee Rajwani, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. The meeting is adjourned and we'll continue with the FPAC. It will continue in 5 minutes with FPAC.